She actually said it. Tell my kids to give me the money they owe me. After 7 years of disappearing, that was the first thing Diana demanded. That moment still echoed in the back of the aunt's mind, sharp and cold, like a door slamming after a long silence. It wasn't a greeting. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even a question about how her children were doing. It was a request for money. No, a demand. And it set the tone for everything that would follow. But to truly understand why those words hit so hard, one would have to go back to where it all began. In their childhood, Diana and her older sister had never been close. While the aunt tended to be quiet, responsible, and observant, Diana was the opposite, sharp-tongued, dismissive, and, as their parents said more than once, too proud for her own good. Diana had always been snobbish and unpleasant, brushing off any attempt at closeness, acting as though she were above the family she was born into. Their parents tried to mediate, to soothe the tension, but the gap between the sisters grew like a crack spreading across glass. Even as teenagers, anyone could see they were walking two entirely different paths. When high school ended, that divide became permanent. The aunt chose college, a steady, structured future she would have to work hard for. Diana chose a wealthy boyfriend who promised her comfort without effort. Their parents couldn't afford for her to live alone, so the boyfriend became her lifeline. And with that security behind her, Diana stopped pretending to care what her parents thought. She let them know clearly that she would live however she wanted and that no one, especially not her family, had any right to interfere. But comfort has a way of crumbling when it's built on sand. Diana had twin daughters at 20, then a son a year later. She still had no degree, no job experience, no plan. When she discovered her partner was cheating and he walked away from the relationship, everything fell apart. Yes, he paid child support, but he refused to be involved, signing away his parental rights. The twins were only 3, the boy still a toddler. And Diana, who had once bragged about her independence, was suddenly alone, terrified, and financially unstable. The aunt knew their relationship was strained, but she also knew those children didn't deserve to suffer for Diana's choices. So she stepped in. She wasn't wealthy, but she made enough to contribute a small amount every month alongside her parents. It wasn't much, but it kept Diana afloat. Those early months were brutal. Diana had to start from the bottom at minimum wage jobs that offered flexible hours, but very little pay. Because babysitting was expensive, she depended on the aunt constantly, more than she ever acknowledged. And the more time the aunt spent around the children, the clearer the truth became. Diana didn't just feel overwhelmed. She resented her kids. She saw them as obstacles to the life she believed she deserved. What began as frustration quietly morphed into cruelty. The aunt would visit, not for Diana's sake, but for the children's. She just wanted to make sure they were safe, fed, and comforted. Yet too often she arrived to find them crying, tense, fearful. Diana reprimanded them for the smallest mistakes. She lashed out without hesitation, chastising them for minor infractions and striking out at them simply for being children. It broke the aunt's heart. She wanted to intervene, truly intervene, take the kids home with her, give them stability, warmth, the kind of childhood Diana refused to provide. But the law didn't work in her favor. Diana wasn't abusive enough in the legal sense, and the courts typically preferred to keep families together, especially since the children had already lost their father. The aunt knew that if she made one wrong move, one accusation too strong, Diana would cut her out completely. And if that happened, the kids would lose the only emotionally safe adult they had. So she stayed quiet, patient, determined to remain close, even if it meant swallowing her anger. As the years passed, Diana's resentment deepened. She began dating again, drifting from one man to another, and every time a relationship failed, she blamed the children. She never told new partners she was a mother until weeks into dating, and when they inevitably backed away, she saw it as proof that her kids had ruined her life. She would remind them, cruelly, of how their father had abandoned her, following it with threats, that she could abandon them too if they didn't behave. The children grew up in that environment, uneasy, always waiting for the next outburst, always grateful for the weekends when their aunt visited. She became their anchor, their quiet place, the person they trusted with things they could never say to their mother. They came to her for homework help, life advice, even emotional reassurance. And the aunt, who had never married and never had children of her own, poured her entire heart into them. By the time the oldest turned 18, the decision seemed obvious to them, even if it terrified Diana. They packed their things, walked out of their mother's door, and moved into their aunt's home, the only place that had ever truly felt like home. And that moment, simple yet monumental, became the turning point of everything that came after. Because while the aunt saw it as an act of survival and love, Diana saw it as betrayal, one she would never forgive. And it was that wound, festering in silence for 7 long years, that finally led Diana to return demanding money, as though the past could be rewritten with a single shameless request. And little did she know, the children's choice at 18 would end up shaping all of their lives in ways she never imagined. It didn't happen suddenly. It wasn't loud or dramatic at first. But after years of tiptoeing around their mother's temper, the 3 kids finally reached the moment when the truth became impossible to ignore. They were 18, old enough to vote, old enough to choose where they lived, and certainly old enough to understand that Diana had never really been a mother to them. And that realization was the quiet spark that lit the fire. They packed what little they owned into 2 duffel bags and a worn suitcase. No yelling, no dramatic exit, just a calm, steady decision. When Diana walked into the living room and saw them standing by the door, she didn't ask if they were okay. She didn't ask why they looked so nervous. She went straight to anger. "What's this supposed to mean?" she demanded, eyes wide. "Where do you think you're going with those bags?" Her son, usually the most soft-spoken, lifted his chin slightly. "We're leaving, Mom. We're moving in with Aunt." The room went dead silent. Then Diana's voice cracked open like a storm. "You're leaving me? After everything I did for you? Everything I sacrificed?" She pointed at them with a trembling finger, rage and disbelief fighting for control. "She's been poisoning you against me. Don't you see? She's stealing you. She's stealing my children." But they didn't flinch. They didn't scream back. They didn't even explain. They simply walked past her, leaving behind the guilt she tried to chain them with. For the first time, they chose peace over fear. And Diana never forgave them for it. In the months that followed, she cut off everyone. Her children, her sister, even her aging parents. Anyone who didn't take her side became an enemy. She blocked phone numbers, ignored messages, and carried her story like a torch she was determined to burn the family with. Whenever a relative asked why the kids had left, she answered with the same rehearsed fury. She brainwashed them. She made them hate me. She wanted the credit for raising them, so she took them when I wasn't looking. And because bitterness is convincing when delivered with enough passion, some people believed her. Some nodded, sympathized, and repeated her version of events at family gatherings, painting the aunt as a manipulator who stole children just for attention. Meanwhile, reality told a different story. The aunt never once defended herself publicly. She didn't feel the need to. Instead, she poured her energy into helping the 3 young adults rebuild their lives. She helped the oldest navigate medical school applications, stayed up late proofreading essays, and sat with him through every anxious phone call. She encouraged one of the twins to pursue her love of literature, guiding her through teaching programs and certification exams. And for the other twin, the one with steady hands and a creative mind, she co-signed a business loan so the young woman could open her first hair studio. She didn't brag. She didn't post their achievements online. She didn't expect gratitude. She simply showed up, every day, every exam season, every late-night call, quietly filling the role Diana abandoned. Life moved forward. The kids grew into adults, successful and proud, carrying none of the bitterness their mother tried to plant in them. And by the time the aunt turned 48, they were ready to honor her in a way she never anticipated. It was supposed to be a simple birthday dinner, just a small gathering of friends, co-workers, and the 3 people she considered her world. The evening was warm, filled with laughter and stories, and the kind of comfort that only comes from years of shared healing. After dessert, her nephew asked everyone for a moment. The room fell quiet as he handed his aunt a small envelope, plain and white. "This isn't repayment," he said gently, betraying none of the nerves behind his eyes. "We could never repay what you've done. This is just our way of saying thank you. For believing in us when no one else did. For giving us a home when we didn't feel we had one." Inside the envelope was a check, larger than anything she expected, written not out of obligation but pure gratitude. She protested, of course, told them she didn't need it, didn't want it. But they insisted, one after another, each of them echoing the same sentiment. It isn't about money. It's about what your faith meant to us. Later that night, alone in the quiet of her living room, she made a small post on social media. Nothing flashy, nothing boastful. Just a heartfelt thank you to her nieces and nephew for planning the birthday and surprising her with a gift she never asked for. She didn't think Diana would see it. They hadn't spoken in years. They'd blocked each other everywhere. But screenshots travel fast in families where gossip is a hobby. And within 24 hours, the post made its way to the one person guaranteed to turn gratitude into chaos. Diana. The message arrived first. So they're giving you money? Interesting. You need to talk to them. Tell them to give me my share. After all I did raising them, they owe me far more than they owe you. The aunt stared at the screen, quiet disbelief settling in. It wasn't even subtle. No pretense of reconciliation, no attempt at warmth. Just demand after demand, as if motherhood were a financial investment she expected to collect returns on. She didn't respond. That silence was enough to ignite Diana's fury. Within hours, Diana stormed onto social media, an audience of distant relatives and acquaintances watching as she unleashed post after post accusing her sister of stealing her children's loyalty and now her rightful money. She didn't just twist the truth. She mangled it into something grotesque. She manipulated them for years. One post read, "She made them hate me," said another. "She planned this from the beginning so she could take from me." And people believed her, at least the ones who had always preferred the drama. Comments rolled in quickly, dripping with judgment. What kind of sister steals her siblings' children? You should be ashamed. That money belongs to their mother, not you. The aunt didn't argue. She didn't try to correct anyone. She didn't defend herself. And that silence, calm, deliberate, unshakable, became the very thing that would turn the tide in a way no one saw coming. Because while the relatives shouted online, while Diana built a tower of accusations brick by brick, none of them knew the aunt hadn't said a single word yet. Not one. And that silence was about to end the entire conflict in a way they never expected. The storm Diana created across social media grew louder by the hour, twisting the truth into a weapon and hurling it toward the one person who refused to fight back. And between every accusation, every dramatic post, every relative who picked up a pitchfork, the aunt did exactly what nobody expected. She stayed quiet. Completely, intentionally quiet. Her silence didn't mean defeat. It meant she had finally chosen not to let Diana dictate the rhythm of her life anymore. But to Diana, someone who thrived on noise, conflict, and attention, silence felt like a threat. And threats had always pushed her over the edge. It started with a late-night call. The aunt saw the name appear on her phone and answered only because she knew avoiding it would lead to more chaos later. Diana didn't waste a second. "So you think you can just ignore me?" she snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut. "You think you can pretend you didn't steal from me? First my kids, and now the money they owe their mother?" The aunt kept her voice steady, almost gentle. "I didn't steal anything from you, Diana." "You did," Diana insisted, breath shaking with anger. "You took my children, don't deny it. You filled their heads with lies. And now, you're taking their money too? Money that should come to me? After everything I sacrificed." The aunt exhaled slowly. There was no point arguing. There never had been. "I don't need their money," she said. "I never asked for it. I only accepted a gift, one you never earned." The words weren't shouted. They weren't cruel. They were simply true. And truth, to Diana, was the deepest insult. There was a brief silence on the line, followed by a breathy laugh. Sharp, incredulous, almost unhinged. "You think you're better than me, don't you? Fine. Don't help me. You'll regret it when everyone sees who you really are." The call ended there, abruptly, like a slammed door. And that was when the real unraveling began. Diana took her outrage straight to social media. She wrote long posts filled with half-truths, then quarters of truths, then nothing but pure invention. She painted herself as the abandoned mother, the forgotten victim, the woman whose ungrateful sister had stolen everything she built. Some relatives didn't even pause to fact-check. They sent the aunt long paragraphs accusing her of betrayal, greed, manipulation. A few even accused her of turning the children against their own mother. But still, the aunt said nothing. Silence, once again. She didn't block anyone. She didn't reply. She didn't attempt to explain herself. Instead, she quietly contacted her nieces and nephew and asked them to come over. When they arrived, they already knew. "We heard she's been posting again," the nephew said, jaw clenched. "We're sorry you had to hear all that." The aunt shook her head. "I'm fine, but I need to tell you what she's asking for." She explained the message, the demands, the accusations. She repeated the call, word for word. And when she finished, nobody spoke for several seconds. Then the youngest, the twin who'd become a teacher, let out a slow, exhausted breath. "She hasn't changed." Her sister nodded, voice trembling but steady. "She's rewriting everything again, like she always did." The nephew, usually calm, felt his temper crack. "She thinks she deserves our money? After what she put us through?" He shook his head. "No. Enough. We've stayed quiet long enough." And in that moment, something shifted. For the first time, the three of them decided they would speak publicly, not to attack, not to escalate, but to tell the truth. Their truth. The nephew was the first to post. His words were careful, honest, and harder than anything Diana had expected. He wrote, "We didn't leave because someone stole us. We left because we were never treated like children, only burdens. Our aunt didn't brainwash us. She saved us. She gave us a home. Our mother made us feel ashamed for existing." Then one of the twins added her own message. "She would humiliate us and make us feel horrible for merely existing. We were afraid to laugh, afraid to make mistakes, afraid to be kids. Our aunt was the only safe place we had." The final twin, the business owner, followed with a shorter but devastating statement. "We are adults. We choose who we call family. And we choose her." Their posts spread quickly, faster than Diana expected, faster than she could control. Relatives who had insulted the aunt hours earlier now found themselves staring at the truth. Undeniable, unfiltered, spoken directly by the people who had lived it. Apologies began pouring in. "I didn't know. I'm so sorry. I believed the wrong person. She told us something completely different." But the aunt didn't gloat. She didn't respond to the apologies either. She simply made a single, calm post of her own, a quiet recounting of events without accusations, without bitterness, without naming anyone. It was the opposite of drama. And maybe that's why it hit so hard. Her words were simple. "I never wanted conflict. I only wanted the kids to be safe. I never asked for recognition or repayment. I love them because they deserve to be loved, and I'm grateful for the adults they've become." It was the emotional mic drop of the entire story. No anger, no blame, just truth. And truth travels further than noise. Within hours, the comment section on Diana's own posts turned against her. People asked questions she couldn't answer. They pointed out contradictions she had no explanation for. And when she tried to defend herself, her children answered every lie with facts. Specific memories, dates, details. The public unraveling lasted barely an hour. After that, Diana deleted her comments. Then the posts. Then her entire account. Finally, she blocked everyone. Her sister, her children, half the family. Her last escape. Her last attempt at control. Her last illusion. But even after being exposed so publicly, she wasn't done. The aunt had learned one painful truth about Diana over the years. People like her never walk away quietly. And she had one move left, one final attempt to reclaim the narrative. A move that would bring the story to its final, deeply satisfying conclusion. The fallout from Diana's final outburst rippled fast, leaving behind a quiet that felt strangely heavy. After the truth had been laid bare, after her children confronted her publicly, after the relatives finally realized what had been happening for decades, there were only two places Diana could turn, outward with blame or inward with reflection. And reflection had never been her choice. So she went for one last swing. It came in the form of a late-night message, short but simmering with resentment, sent to the one person she believed had ruined her image. "I hope you're happy. You made me look like a monster in front of everyone." The aunt read it slowly. Not because it surprised her, it didn't, but because it was so painfully familiar. Diana had spent years crafting the narrative that she was the victim, even when she was the one causing the wounds. It was the same cycle she had repeated in every relationship. Create chaos, deny accountability, then accuse the nearest person of betrayal. The aunt didn't respond. Not out of spite, but because there was nothing left to say. Silence had ended every argument before. Now it would end the entire chapter. And with that choice, no reply, no justification, no reopening of old wounds, the conversation died for good. Her phone buzzed twice more that night, but she didn't check it. She set the device face down and returned to her quiet living room, letting the silence do what years of reasoning couldn't. Silence wasn't revenge. It was clarity. It was the realization that not every battle deserved a response, and not every storm demanded shelter. The next morning, she told the three young adults what had happened. They listened, not with shock, but with the resigned understanding of children who'd spent their whole lives learning how unpredictable their mother could be. "She texted you after all that?" the nephew said, crossing his arms. "Unbelievable." The older twin, the teacher, shook her head. "She still thinks she's the one being harmed." The younger twin, usually the most compassionate, sat forward and took a steady breath before speaking. "Mom's not going to change. We've accepted it. And we're done trying to fix her." The aunt's eyes softened. "You don't have to choose sides. I don't want that for you." But they exchanged a look, one shared among siblings who had endured too much together to be divided now. The nephew spoke for all of them. "We're not choosing sides. We're choosing peace. We're choosing the person who actually showed up for us." Then the youngest said something that sealed the moment. "We won't reach out to her again. Not anymore. We're finished letting her bring chaos into our lives." It wasn't a threat. It wasn't even anger. It was relief spoken out loud. The aunt felt both heartbreak and gratitude at once. Heartbreak that their relationship with their mother had ended like this. Gratitude that they finally valued themselves enough to protect their peace. And they kept their promise. Days passed. Then weeks. Relatives slowly drifted into her messages with apologies wrapped in awkward hesitations. "I didn't know the full story. I'm sorry I believed the wrong person. I shouldn't have judged you." But she didn't cling to their regret or resentment. She didn't need validation and didn't crave vindication. The apologies didn't heal anything. Time and truth already had. She responded politely but briefly. She wasn't interested in reopening old wounds, even if others suddenly wanted to close them. What mattered, what had always mattered, was that the kids were safe, thriving, and finally unburdened. Meanwhile, Diana disappeared. Completely. She deleted her posts, then her comments, then her account. She blocked relatives, friends, her own parents. And finally, she blocked her children. It was a full retreat, the digital equivalent of slamming every door in a burning house. She vanished exactly the way she had appeared in their lives, abruptly, dramatically, and only when she felt she had nothing left to take. The aunt didn't celebrate. She didn't feel victorious. She simply exhaled, letting the final thread of tension slip out of her chest. Closure wasn't loud. It was quiet, almost gentle, like the last page of a long, painful chapter finally being turned. In the months that followed, her home became a different place entirely. Not the emergency shelter it once was, not the refuge from chaos, but a warm anchor, a steady center where birthdays were celebrated, dinners were shared, and laughter lived freely. The kids visited often. They brought friends, partners, stories from work, dreams for the future. It felt like what family should have been all along. One evening, during dinner on the back porch, the nephew raised his glass to the sunset and said, "You know, we got lucky. Most people don't get second chances at family." His sister smiled softly. "Maybe family isn't something you inherit. Maybe it's something you build, something you choose." The aunt felt her throat tighten. She wasn't emotional often, not in front of them, but her voice came out warmer than she intended. "You don't owe me anything," she said. "Love isn't a transaction. I didn't step in because I had to. I stepped in because you deserved better." The youngest twin leaned against her shoulder. "And because you loved us, even when it wasn't easy." The aunt kissed the top of her head. "Love is always a choice." A breeze moved through the yard, carrying the quietness of a life finally free from someone else's chaos. It felt like a full-circle moment, one she never expected to reach. Because the truth was simple. Some people show up only when they think they can take something from you. Some people disappear the moment accountability arrives. And some people, rare, steady, genuine, stay because they believe love is a responsibility, not a bargaining chip. When the silence finally settled over the uproar Diana created, it didn't feel like emptiness. It felt like peace. The kind of peace that comes from letting go. The kind that grows once the noise stops. The kind that teaches you the most powerful lesson of all. Sometimes, silence isn't surrender. Sometimes, silence is the strongest answer you'll ever give.